recording today's session, so you can ask for it afterwards. We'll pass it along to your colleagues if you'd like for us to. We're really thrilled about today's content. We're going to end at 3 o'clock Eastern, straight up. So it's going to be a 30-minute session, and I'm thrilled because we've got some special guests that are going to drop in and tell us about some of the things that they're seeing in the association space as well. Just as quick context, I want to tell you a little bit about the Murray Company so I can kind of build out where we're coming from on this. We're an association consulting company that specializes in revenue generation for associations maybe like yours. We sell millions of dollars worth of ads and exhibits and sponsorships and memberships, and in doing so, we're going to make more than 250,000 contacts this year, which gives us the opportunity to hopefully provide you some thought leadership and really some stories from our experiences. And that's what today's session is all about. We're going to tell you about some things that we've observed while we're out in the field every day recruiting members and sponsors for your organizations. Today we're going to cover I'll cover a few kind of highline items about observations that I've seen for associations overall. Then we're going to talk about membership growth. And in particular, we'll also dive into membership councils and how we've seen those kind of accelerate growth in the organizations that we've worked with and people that we know. Talk about sponsorships, and then we'll say, hey, what's the role of sales leadership in generating more revenue in your organization? Here are a few observations, if you don't mind me kicking it off for you today. First of all, I'm seeing more than ever before a real serious nature about business development and sales in our organizations. If you look at some of the market research that's out there, only half of associations are saying that they're growing membership, as an example. In fact, in one very robust economy. So only about half associations are saying that they're growing. And they're also calling me often, either to help them with their association sales, but they're also looking for association business development folks, and it's a very tight market. All of this is signaling to me that organizations are discovering that they're going to have to change things and have more rigor around their sales and their business development operations. In other words, people aren't just signing up or joining or sponsoring because they're a part of an industry, and that they should be doing it as an obligation to the association. That is no longer happening. The other thing that I'm seeing is how associations are not only evaluating their dues models and possibly addressing caps on the top line of their membership, but they're also looking at new membership categories, people that maybe were not a part of the association before, and opening up new membership categories for them, not only to grow their membership, but to increase revenue. They're also starting to finally embrace the communications revolution. I've spoken about this a number of times. It's amazing that the iPhone is, I think, now 12 years old. Imagine what that has done to the global communications revolution that we're currently in. But here's where we're starting to see it play out. As an example, over 100 million Americans are now listening to podcasts. Many of them are listening to at least one a day. That's up double-digit numbers since last year, and I'm seeing now associations starting to embrace, for example, podcasting, live video, streaming as a part of their engagement in building awareness with their industry. The other thing that's a main idea is there's no doubt that those associations that are developing thought leadership programs and distributing their own thought leadership, or assisting their sponsoring companies in delivering thought leadership into their industry, are winning. And we're going to talk about that here later in the show. So those are some of the main trends that I'm seeing. Let's now drill down into membership a little bit. First of all, sales tactics are changing. I saw about 5 to 6 years ago how associations were beginning to frankly rely, in some ways as a crutch, almost exclusively on email. Very little personal interaction on the sales side. Okay, but now our data is showing us that we're pretty balanced. Our sales work is about 60% by email and 40% by phone. It's more difficult to reach people by the phone than ever before. But what I see as a trend is more engagement on mobile. I think we're going to start texting. I think we're going to start messaging through social media and other places so we can recruit people where they are. And where are they? They are on mobile devices. We're seeing that kind of tactic help our sales efforts grow. In fact, what we're seeing right now is about 47% of everyone that ends up in the pipeline, we end up closing. So that might be a metric for you to kind of take back to your own shop and see how you're closing folks in your pipeline. So this sales engagement is changing. It's becoming much more balanced, and we're also using mobile much more. And the key area, I think, in 2018, which will continue in 19, is the emphasis that associations are putting on onboarding programs and engagement. It's becoming one of the things that associations are focused on the most. I'll give you an example. We put together a dedicated program, very specific, about onboarding new members for an association over the last 24 months. 100% of those members rejoined, but it was very intentional. It had a specific plan to engage them and get them involved in the association. Their regular association onboarding and engagement was only rendering about 80%. So what we're seeing is associations not just getting people to join, ring the bell, right, and start sending them everything. It's a much more intentional program going on. So let's talk about membership a little bit more with one of my colleagues, Jordan Weiss, who's a business development manager here at the Murray Company, and he's been doing a fantastic job in the membership recruitment area. Jordan, I want to ask you a couple quick questions. You've been very successful at leveraging live events and conferences in membership recruitment. How has it worked for you? Tell us about that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on today. So the live events I've found are a better way of reaching a group of people that are all going to be in the same place at the same time. It's hard to bank on setting up phone calls and getting emails back from everyone. So when you have your annual conference or any one of your shows coming up and you have an attendee list of non-members that are going to be there, it's really important that you're reaching out to those folks months in advance to try and set up those meetings before their schedule gets completely full. They are not there to talk about membership in most cases. So if you can get ahead of that and make sure you're on their calendar, it's going to be a lot better than chasing folks around the trade floor the whole meeting.
Right. So what you've been very successful at is developing specific times. You're not just waiting for somebody to come by the membership booth, right?
No, you don't want to do that because often, as I mentioned, they're not there to ask about that. They are at the meeting to get new business, and that's going to be the last thing on their mind. So if you can get out in front of that, it's much easier to plan out.
One of the other things that you've been successful at this year, and a number of the associations that are on the call today have very, very good advocacy programs. Tell me how kind of selling government relations as a part of that value prop is changing, but increasingly important.
Yeah, I think more than ever right now, it's just important to relay the message that your staff is the best group to keep those companies up to date in a ever-changing climate right now. If companies are going to try to do this on their own, they may run into a whole lot of bumps. And I think if you can relay the message and actually get your government affairs staff involved in the membership process, it really shows folks what you're going to bring to the table for them.
Jordan, thanks a lot. I think this is really important, folks. One of the things that Jordan's emphasizing here is making sure that the advocacy team is connected to the sales team. I've seen so many organizations in the past where those folks didn't even know each other. But it's the main, if it's not the main thing, it's one of the very top things we address as an association. That's a reason to join, is how we advocate on their behalf. We've got to Jordan's point, we've got to connect our advocacy teams with the sales operation. Jordan, thanks for joining us. Now I want to welcome another good friend of ours, Pete Kaminskis of CompTIA. Hey, basically, here's what this is, gang. This is the Information Technology Association for the world. All right? Pete has been very successful in launching membership councils within the association, almost an association within the association, and it's propelling them to growth. Pete, tell me about what are some of the scenarios that you're using membership councils for your association.
Yeah, thanks, GP, and hello, everybody, and thanks for having me on. At a high level, launching membership councils are a great way to, drive growth, visibility, and relevance, all the themes that we have previously talked about. But one common, business case that many associations struggle with is placating competing interests within the membership. For example, the members who call the shots, namely the board of directors, don't always address the needs of everyone in the membership. And this is not uncommon for associations with various audiences that they're trying to work with. So here come using membership councils as a way to address this. And as I describe it, and JP, you mentioned this, a membership council is an association within an association where the group has its own leadership, governance, initiatives, branding, and in some instances, its own a la carte membership. And at a high level, it allows these individual groups to have their own club where they can work on common issues that they all care about.
Yeah, and how has that been an effective tool for you to drive growth? Are you getting some organizations maybe that you wouldn't have gotten or have engaged if you didn't have a council?
No, absolutely. Again, I think, embracing that power of the club is something that we could really offer. And, again, at a high level, it's just bringing around people with common interests, interested in driving a common initiatives. And by doing that, creating that environment where they're with their peers and are able to, really say they belong to a group that is making a difference, I think it has been very effective for us.
I know a lot of times you can launch these new initiatives and have a lot of enthusiasm and momentum. How do you kind of keep that going after you've launched it? How do you maintain that kind of velocity and energy around that program?
No, excellent question. I think one thing that we have done successfully is that we've, I use the term playbooks are for quarterbacks. We don't have a set playbook in place. We do that on purpose from both a governance as well as a operational standpoint, and it allows us to be nimble because, as Jordan mentioned, it's an ever-changing environment, and we want to be able to shift our areas of focus, things that we want to work on, to address those needs as they emerge.
Pete, I want to thank you for being on this today. I really appreciate it, and I think we've got a whole opportunity to talk about councils in the new year as its own briefing. So that's going to be great. So let's move over into a little non-dues revenue discussion, folks. Sponsorships. Only 6% of our total revenue, on average, from our associations is coming from sponsorship. But if you look at the market, which, by the way, is a $24 billion game, 75% of all companies are considering new sponsorships, and almost all of them are activating their social media platforms to promote their sponsorship programs. So in fact, we even increase the promotion of our programs when our sponsors are involved because they have these great social media platforms. Thought leadership has been an increasing part of this. Now, here's what I know you're going to say. And by the way, I took this picture this morning from my newspaper. Okay, so excuse the crudeness of the picture, but my point is this. Thought leadership and sponsored content is available in your association. If the Washington Post can do it, and in this case, let me show you here, sponsored content from Siemens in this event around some of the mayors and Uber and folks like that talking about technology. The program sponsored by Siemens, it's in the newspaper, it's in live media, and it's a live event. If they've been able to accomplish this at the Washington Post, you can do it in your association. We've just got to figure out the ways to navigate it. But no one's going to die if you do this. It's available to you. Let me turn it over to one of my best and favorite colleagues in the space, Lizabeth Johnson, Vice President at the Murray Company. Elizabeth, what are some of the trending inventory areas that sponsors want today?
Yeah, hi. So probably not much of a surprise, but it is thought leadership. It's exactly what you just talked about. It's anything around that, speaking, opportunities, white papers, webinars, using that those items are the most hot inventory items. It's up to the association to find the best way to do that. And so if that might mean not necessarily speaking or putting them on the agenda, I've seen some really good things done with apps, using meeting apps to push out content, or complementary medias that they have outside of the event, so perhaps the newsletter that the association has or a blog that the leadership has, are all great ways of pushing out that inventory that so many of the sponsors, or pushing out that thought leadership that so many of the sponsors are looking for right now.
Absolutely a great point there, to make sure that you're offering some of this thought leadership delivery, maybe even outside of that live event that they're sponsoring. Great point there. You do a lot of negotiations. I heard you having one today with a sponsor prospect. What are some of the things that they want in the negotiations and the discussions that you're having?
Yep. Two of the concessions that are really popular amongst people I'm working with right now. The first is the complimentary registrations. The sponsorship, what they want to do, they want to speak, yes. They want to meet people, particularly with the live events. They want face-to-face interaction. And so that's been one of the things that they want the most. And it actually helps me push some of the inventory that's not as hot or not as in interest. If I can say, oh, well, this one includes a registration, then I'm more likely to get that off the shelf. So that one's very popular. The other one is lists. And we are all, and I think this is very important, we're starting to be more strict about email lists and access to emails and phone numbers and things like that, and that's completely fine. But still providing a list of attendees with names, company, title, things like that, those are the two things that my sponsors are looking for most often in those packages that I'm delivering.
You know, we've spent a lot of time in some of these discussions actually talking about the prospectus and the inventory and how you send it out. What do you think is helping your sponsor prospects buy from you? What do they want to know about the association, the event, or the program?
Right. The thing that I use most often is a list, what I call my titles and companies list. You'd be surprised actually how many associations don't have one. And we've kind of had to generate for them. It's basically a list of everyone that went to that meeting the year before. However, we leave off the names and a lot of the private information. We do keep the title of the individual. We keep the company the individual's with, and then maybe some sort of metrics, either company size if you have it, even their regional area, their city or state or something like that. That's the next best thing, because there's some people that say, oh, well, maybe I can come to the meeting with a free registration and check it out. No, you don't get to come for free. But if I give you an attendee list of who was there last year, that's going to give you pretty much the same results, which is who's there. They want to know who's there, and we're able to provide that with that tool.
Hey, folks, again, Elizabeth's done a great job working with association clients and sponsorship growth. It's one area that I think overall our space is underperforming. So this is an opportunity for growth. Now let me go to our next guest. But before I do that, let me make a real quick point around sales leadership. this is the area where I forgot about this slide, but let me talk about it now. This culture of growth has to come from the top. Gang, I learned this business, frankly, from people like Tom Donahue and the late Bill Carto, frankly, who passed away this week, who were very geared up at the CEO level at driving revenue and membership growth in their organization. They thought that that was one way to measure how successful the organization was. And that's the point, that people were interested and wanted to do business with us. That was a metric for success. And if you as a business leader can do these things, I think it will show your team that you're interested in this. Ask from your sales team weekly reports, including the pipeline and the activity. Ask them to identify the top 10 key accounts that we're talking to in any time of membership sales, for an example. They ought to be able to generate it for you immediately. Get involved in sales yourself. Get somewhere between 6 and a dozen accounts that you're active with, that you're calling, that you're involved with your sales team in, and then also ask your team to generate sales playbooks that have scripting and talking points so the entire organization can be involved in sales. Let me turn this over to my friend, Senior Vice President Mike Thomas. Mike, you lead the sales team at the Murray Company here. Tell us about how sales has changed over the last couple of years.
Hey, good afternoon. I think, as you referenced earlier, technology has definitely changed. We were evolving from just emails and phone calls to reaching out to people through social media and things of that nature. But I'll tell you one thing that hasn't changed, just hard work, doing the work every day, reaching out to folks. I'll also say prospects have changed in a big way, where they are doing so much more research than they ever have, well before you've ever contacted them. So they are, they're on the website, they're on your social media sites, they're looking and evaluating you well before maybe they pick up the phone to call you about a sponsorship or membership opportunity, or before the salesperson ever reaches out to them. That can be good and bad, because sometimes they could have some a false narrative of what it is that what you're selling or what you're about, and the salesperson has to be careful on that and to sometimes backpedal. But there's great opportunities there, and we see it every day here just at the Murray Company. People, they know so much about us before we ever even talk to them.
Hey, you're absolutely right. The prospects are different, and then you as a sales leader, you've got to kind of moderate the burners a little bit. You got to turn it up. You got to turn it down. Tell me about the carrot and the stick approach. How much of both?
Well, I think in today's day and age, my personal preference is the carrot, but I think that most people would say that. And you use the stick very sparingly, or it becomes very, very ineffective if you overuse it. So here at our company, we have clear goals and expectations laid out for every week, every quarter, every year. JP referenced weekly reports. Also meet with our sales, our individual sales reps on a weekly basis, and we have quarterly reviews. So they are they know where they stand at all times. And also when we set up goals for them, they provide input into those goals. So there's buy-in.
Another thing I want to add here is really important in terms of your sales leadership. We're doing quarterly reviews, but we're also setting up quarterly goals for the sales team as well, and the sales individuals. If you set up these annual goals and they get behind and they feel like they're losing and they never can catch up, that's bad for the sales team. So moderate those goals and kind of those benchmarks on a monthly or quarterly basis. so people feel like they're always in the game and they always have a chance. Hey, Mike, let's talk about managing kind of the new sales folks. I mean, we've got a new generation that's coming through here. Often we're hiring new people that could be younger, that aren't from the school of hard knocks when it was twice as hard when we started, obviously. You know, it's all easy for them, right, with all these tools. Not true, but tell me your observations with the millennials and how to work with them.
Yeah, so I have found they value feedback more than any other group, good or positive. I think that's what they're used to. They want to hear how they're doing, good or bad, all the time. They like very clear direction. So sometimes you've really got to spell it out for them, but they follow through.
Yeah, and I'm with you, man. These folks are very engaged, and some might think some may convert that into needy. What I see is they want the feedback, right?
Yes, they want the feedback, and they're also pleasers, though. They want to do a good job, and they want to make the company proud. They want to make themselves proud. You see a lot of that behavior.
Tell me about kind of what if someone on the call is a sales leader or their manager, or I know a couple people on the line may be leading sales teams for the first time as part of their portfolio. What kind of advice can you give them on that kind of daily basis?
Well, I think one thing, you want to be there for them. You want to be a sounding board, but one of the most important things, don't go solving all their problems. So fine, they come to you with an issue, a problem they're dealing with. You got to encourage them to solve it on their own, or to think about it. Help them get there, so they can get there 75, 80, 90% of the way there. So so you don't get into this rut of answering the questions, even though you may quickly know what the answer is. Don't do it.
Yes. Resist
that urge. Let them figure it out, or help them, give them a little nudge. And that's the only way they will learn. Yeah,
I think the day and age of the player coach has passed, right? Coach them up, but you can't play for them as well, right? That's not a metric for success.
Correct. And I'd even say your senior people, you got to challenge them too every day. I think it's easy to put them on the back burner and say they've got it, and they're the ones. I don't have to worry about them. They've been doing this for 15, 20 years. Yeah, I'll just focus on the less experienced folks.
Yeah, you got to keep that experienced sales team sharp for sure, and then continue to work with that younger group and keep giving them feedback. Mike, appreciate your feedback on this, and thanks for leading our sales team. Hey, so folks, let me wrap this up here for you today. I've included in this deck, and we'll send it to you if you need it, all the contact information for the folks that are online today that have been guests of ours, from Pete Kaminskas at CompTIA to JW, Elizabeth, Mike, great team here, and I appreciate their feedback. And if you ever want to connect with us, we've got these links in the deck today. It's going to include our podcast and our YouTube channel. Man, we're everywhere. So if you need our help, if you want to download our free content, feel free to engage with it. Wish you the very best for organization growth in 2019. Thanks for joining us. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.